Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a good Eid holidays and have enjoyed your time. Um, we are going to start our session now, as it's already the time to start the session. Uh, Today, we're going to discuss the global strategy and organization. But before I proceed, I just want to make sure that everyone can hear my voice clearly. Okay, perfect. Um, Actually, before I get into the discussion, today's session, it's like as you have noticed until now, most of the things that we have covered until now is somehow a repetition, as it's a repetition of some facts with the emphasis on a different what do you call topic each time, because at the end of the day, we all know that what we have been discussing since the first day was all about the international business, and with the emphasis of globalization or internationalization. So many of the factors in management that we're discussing, we will be focusing more on the internationalization aspect of it. And like today, we are going to study the strategies and organizations again with the emphasis on globalization. First, we're going to see what the definition of the strategy is. It's a plan of action that channels on organizations' resources so that it can effectively differentiate itself from competitors, help it and assist it in accomplishing distinct goals and achieving superior performance. Well, strategy is always the winning card of organizations, because many organizations may be sharing the same uh, resources and raw materials and uh, human resources and whatever. However, you can see that they are truly different from one another in terms of their output and in terms of their efficiency and effectiveness. And the reason for that is the difference between the two company strategies. One had an effective strategy in basically turning its resources into more effective and efficient what do you call outcomes. So so we can see that the strategy is something very important that an organization has to set in order to direct its resources effectively uh, to gain the competitive advantage over its rivals. Managers develop strategies based on the organization's strengths, weaknesses, and evaluation of opportunities and threats. This is again what we discussed a few sessions ago when we were talking about the SWOT analysis. And yeah, I mean, you may recall, the strengths and weaknesses were the factors or the internal factors of a company that the company had to diagnose and find out and basically base its strategies on them. And opportunities and threats were the external factors which they had to evaluate and analyze. Managers primarily make decisions about the firm's production and marketing activities and the development and allocation of resources devoted to these. Uh, Next, we move on to what the strategy should pinpoint. It should basically direct and address to actions, which we will list as formulating a strong international vision, which is very important because, of course, having an international vision may not necessarily be an important strategy for all organizations. As I discussed, we are mainly emphasizing on organizations that are either globalized or have a vision of becoming globalized. So that's why we're saying that formulating a strong international vision is very important. Allocating scarce resources on a worldwide basis. We all know that there's the problem of resource scarcity and limitations. All resources are scarce, so it's really important how we manage our resources. And participating in major markets. implementing global partnerships, engaging in global competitive moves. We will be getting into details of these, so I'm just going to read through them, and we will see more of each part on the next coming slides. And configuring value-adding activities on a global scale, basically broadening your value-adding activities on the global scale. This will, as we will discuss, it will help a company in terms of its efficiency and effectiveness of its value-adding activities. The 4 strategic objectives that such companies and such organizations must consider is 1, efficiency, which is to minimize the cost of operations and activities. The company may, let's say, 2 car manufacturing organizations are producing the same number of cars per year. This doesn't mean that both organizations can be compared equally and as if their efficiency is the same. An efficient organization is the one that can minimize its cost and keeping up its same number of outputs, because you may produce a car and let's say at a cost of $10,000 for each car and sell it at $11,000. This does not sound like an efficient, basically, strategy for managing your resources and producing your output. Whereas if your cost of production, for example, for the same $11,000 car is $5,000, that seems to be more efficient because you have a $6,000 difference, which will be considered as your revenue, and some part of it will eventually be part of your final profit. So efficiency will be the minimization of the cost of operations and activities, which for those of you who have studied and completed the course of operational research, I'm sure that you have come up with the formulas and all these things that will make you understand the true meaning of an efficient, basically, line management in terms of production. Then we have the effectiveness, which may sound similar to efficiency, but it's different because efficiency is addressing the cost of operations and minimizing the cost, whereas effectiveness is talking about maximizing the revenue. So a company may be efficient in terms of, but usually an efficient organization will also be an effective one as well, because you already have a safe margin between your cost and your revenue. So you're already somehow maximizing your revenue and you are effective. Then we have the flexibility, which taps the local resources and opportunities to maximize the options for the firm, which of course that's something which basically it's important in managing the resources and giving yourself more options in terms of utilizing your resources. So you will not be limited to just one specific line of production or product. And learning is another objective, is another strategic objective, which recently many companies have discovered and have realized it as a strategic objective. Maybe in the past there were less companies who would emphasize on such objectives. And it addresses to adding the proprietary technology brand name and management capabilities by internalizing knowledge gained from international ventures. So as you can see, like even in organizations, in many of the successful organizations, you can see the department of, let's say, research and development and R&D. One of the basically main objectives of the R&D division will be to address this main objective which we just discussed. We have the multi-domestic and global industries. Multi-domestic industries are the firms that apply a country-by-country approach to product development and marketing as dictated by specific needs, tastes, laws, and economic situations. Competition is on a country-by-country basis, which they gave the example of food and beverage, consumer products, clothing, and fashion industries. Well, it does make sense because not all industries are purely globalized in terms of their strategies. Sometimes, depending on the field of business that you are involved in, you may be forced to practice the multi-domestic industry, and you may be basically categorized as a multi-domestic industry. Why? Because the type of product that you are producing, in terms of basically in terms of product development and in terms of your marketing strategies, it has to be country by country. You cannot have something standardized for, let's say, all your branches and all your plants throughout the world. You have to direct them country by country, with each having their own set of strategies. For example, with this, like we saw the example of fashion industry. Let's okay. You know that the Arabs, they have their traditional basically clothing that they wear, which they call dishdasha. It's something that, of course, in terms of sales, you have the most number of sales in Arabic countries with Arab men buying it. And of course, it will not be to the interest of, let's say, people in Europe or America or, let's say, South America or Australia or even other parts of Asia which are non-Arabs. But sometimes you see that even such type of clothing, it's produced by a famous, like, let's say, international fashion designer. Like, let's just take it as an example. I'm not sure that they produce it or not, but let's say, for example, D&G. D&G, for sure, they will not produce the dishdasha for, let's say, for the Europe sector. It will be focused for their market in the Arab world. So it's something that they have to consider country by country, and it's not something global. And of course, you can find many other examples, because I would say that most of the industries actually do fall under the multi-domestic industries rather than the global industries, even though you may think that, and you may consider their brand as a very famous international brand, but still they may be considered as a multi-domestic industry. And we have the global industries, which are mainly the aerospace, automobiles, telecommunication, computers, chemicals, and industrial equipment industries. They are firms that devise products and marketing appropriate for an entire region or for the world. So they can have the ability, they will have the option to somehow standardize their strategies according to a specific region or even to the entire world. Like, for example, we discussed the aerospace or even automobiles. Automobiles, like, you may see that, like, let's take, for example, Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz S-Class is the same in the US, it's the same in Europe, it's the same in everywhere in the world. Of course, they do have those differences, but those differences are only they have nothing to do with that specific market. It has to do with the different classes of people. Like, you see, like, for example, the S-Class of Mercedes, it has different options, it has different classes. Well, that's only about your budget. It has nothing to do with the region that you're living in. So it's something that they can, of course, there may be very minor, let's say, modifications on the product, because you cannot say something, you cannot consider this as something totally absolute, because I can give you examples that on each of the industries that is mentioned here, that they can also all be considered as multi-domestic as well, because, like, even for the aerospace, let's say, for example, the the aircraft that Boeing produces for, let's say, Emirates Airlines, which is for the UAE. Like they may have some extra printings on, like, let's say, inside the plane with the Arabic language, which will be different if the same plane is going to be sold to a country in South America, like let's say Brazil, which for sure it will be in Spanish. So these are very minor modifications, but in general, the strategies, they can be standardized in terms of region or even globally. This is an diagram that we will be discussing in the coming slides again. It has to do with the different pressures that are basically a burden to the company in terms of global integration. And here we can see the pressures for local responsiveness to the changes that the company has to make in terms of its strategies and products in order to become local responsive and in order to satisfy the needs and wants of the local market that they are operating in. So I'm just going to read through them because, as I said, in the coming slides we will be discussing it more into details. But in terms of global integration, we have the seek of cost reduction through scale economies. So that's one of the objectives of becoming global, is to be able to reduce your cost as you can basically receive your raw material, and you can access the raw material and resources in different countries at a cheaper rate, because we all know that every country has its own set of resources, and if you can actually negotiate directly with those countries in terms of basically getting your resources, you will be able to reduce your cost and get the same raw materials and resources at a cheaper rate and a cheaper cost. One of the examples would be the human resource. A cheap labor would be in countries like, let's say, India or China. So that's why companies, they do consider of outsourcing some, or for some countries, for all of their operations to those countries like China and India, in order to enjoy the advantages of having cheaper labor and hence reducing their costs. Also, the need to capitalize on converging consumer trends and universal needs, providing uniform service to global customers, conducting global sourcing, monitoring and responding to global competitors, and taking advantage of media with cross-national reach. However, on the other hand, we have the pressures for local responsiveness, which these organizations have to consider. One of these is the need to leverage national endowments such as the local talents and basically the talented human resource to cater to local consumer needs, to accommodate differences in distribution channels, respond to local competition, adjust to cultural differences, and meet the host government requirements and regulations, which of course is something very obvious, because if you want to have your business considered as legal, you must abide by the government requirements and regulations. So the global integration, which we were discussing at this part, we will see it more in details in this slide. It says that a characteristic of global industries in which firms coordinate their value chain activities across many countries. Why? In order to maximize their efficiency, their effectiveness, their flexibility, and learning. These are the four objectives that we discussed in 3-4 slides back. And so we are saying that the purpose of global integration would be for the firms to coordinate their value chain activities across the different countries in order to maximize their efficiency, effectiveness, flexibility, and learning. Global integration promotes learning and cross-fertilization, as well as reduction of wasteful duplication, which is the redundancy, across the firm's operations worldwide. So if you have a proper global integration, you will prevent basically the costly and wasteful duplication of operations and work across your company's operations worldwide throughout the globe. Then listing the pressures which we were discussing on that diagram for global integration, the first one will be the economies of scale, which is concentrating on manufacturing in few select locations to achieve economies of mass production. Well, we all know.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sorry if you disturbed that, sir. Our prayer time is getting late, sir. If you could please give us 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we could start the class.
Sorry, for what?
Prayer time is getting late, sir.
Oh, okay. 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 I think 10 minutes would be too much. Because we'll be getting
okay,
off.
5 minutes, sir.
Okay.
5 minutes.
Yes.
Is okay, sir.
All right. So no problem. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yes. After the prayer, sir, please also reply my question: coordination versus integration, the difference between them.
No problem. We will discuss that. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
No problem. Hello. I hope everyone's back now. Okay. Before I continue, I'm just gonna give a short answer to Mr. Nasrat's question in terms of the difference between coordination and integration. Well, as you can see from their names, they're totally two different strategies that can be used by an organization. Coordination will mean to, in terms of coordinating and working together of different like departments or branches. I mean, it depends, of course, on what type of organizations we're talking about. Like if it's a domestic organization with different departments, it will be the coordinations and the level of cooperation between these local departments. And if we're talking about a multinational organization like that has branches, let's say, in 15 different countries in the world, it will be the cooperation and the close cooperation between all these, let's say, 15 branches throughout the world. However, when we're talking about integration, integration will be a change of structure in the organization. In the first one, you're not talking about any changes. You're simply talking about cooperating and coordinating together. Whereas in this one, you're talking about a change. You're talking about a shift. You're talking about a change of structure. Like, for example, you have let's say a car manufacturing plant that will produce a car. The spare parts of these cars will be produced, like, let's say, in 6 different plants in, like, let's say, different parts of the United States. Then you will come up to the conclusion that you can actually integrate 2 of these plants that are manufacturing the spare parts for your cars, and it will eventually reduce the cost of your production. So you're not talking about any coordination or cooperation anymore. You're talking about integrating 2 of these plants. So it's a change of structure. You no longer have 5 plants that are producing your spare parts. You now have 4. So this is the difference. I hope it's clear for you. Okay. Moving on to the pressures of the global integration. Economies of scale, as you may all know, that a small plant that produces, like, let's say, 100 units of a specific product has a higher cost of production compared to a plant that produces the same product but at a quantity of, let's say, 20,000. Why? Because the cost of production, the fixed cost of production, is distributed between a higher number of products, and hence the cost of production of each unit will will be reduced. This is considered as the economies of scale. So, so in terms of global integration, it's saying that concentrating the manufacturing in few select locations to achieve the economies of mass production. So in terms, I mean, instead of having, like, let's say, a large number of locations with a fewer amounts of produced units, you will have fewer, let's say, locations with a mass production, and this will assist the company and organization in terms of its economies of scale strategy. Then we have capitalizing on converging consumer trends and universal needs. Companies such as Nike, Dell, ING, and Coca-Cola, and other big, let's say, international brands, which may come to your mind as well, like, let's say, Apple, for example. They offer products that appeal to customers everywhere. So, so it's something that it becomes an advantage to a company, because already it's it will be a branding for your company when you become an internationalized company. Uniform service to global customers. Services are easier to standardize when their creation and delivery are centralized. This is something very obvious. Of course, if you are operating in the service sector, it's much easier for you to have a centralized strategy. Centralized strategy is when all, let's say, different parts of an organization, all the subsidiaries, will follow and look up to the head, to the to the highest authority and to the highest managerial level in the organizational structure, and they will follow the strategies that come from there. So of course it will become uniform. If you have, like, let's, for example, take the example of airlines like Emirates Airlines or Swiss Air or any other airlines. Usually, because their type of product is service, so the service that they're offering to their customers, it is internationalized. I mean, it is standardized, and it does follow a centralized strategy, meaning that they will only follow the orders that come directly from their headquarters, and of course it will assist them in terms of getting the competitive advantage in the global environment. Continuing the pressures of global integration, we have the global sourcing of raw materials, which we discussed earlier.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
I have a question, sir. Could you please go to previous slide?
Yes, sure.
Sir, about centralizing, don't you think that it's a good strategy if a company is going globally? That company should use the decentralized strategy, because cultures will be there. There will be cultural differences, and market will be different, and those factors, if in centralized, if the headquarters just give an order or give a policy, and it is not in recognition with the local market. For example, Coca-Cola is based in US, and Coca-Cola will develop a strategy which is suitable for US market, but that would not be very suitable in Indian market. So don't you think it's a little bit conflicting? It should be decentralized sometimes.
Yes, you are 100% correct. And if you notice, one thing which I said that your example doesn't fall under this, I said that uniform in the service sector, for the services are easier to be standardized. I'm not talking about products. Of course, when we were talking about products, we discussed it at several occasions, like since day one, that of course, and in fact, that's one of the factors of local responsiveness, which we will get to in the coming slide again, because we have discussed it previously as well while we were discussing other topics. That when you are moving to a new region, when you are moving to a new country, you will have to modify your products in order to satisfy the local needs of that local market, basically. Like we even gave the example of the restaurants and how they changed their menus, like internationalized companies, like even franchises, like such as like let's say McDonald's or KFC. They have different menus for different regions of the world. So that's somehow basically what you were talking about and what you were saying. But I'm talking about the service sector. I'm talking about when you're providing the services, it's easier to standardize your strategies. And as I said again, like about before, like we went to the break, I said that nothing is 100% absolute. Like even this one, which I'm talking, which I'm saying that it's better to have it centralized. It's not 100%. It's the main strategies of the service sector that it's best to have it as a centralized strategies. But again, at the end of the day, you will need to somehow basically modify your even your services in terms of a service sector in order to satisfy the needs and wants of the local market. I hope I answered your question. Okay. And we have another comment. In some areas, centralized system is fine, and in some areas, decentralized. This is well, of course. I mean, if you noticed what we have been discussing throughout this course, it's all about familiarizing you with different strategies, with different terms and terminologies. Like even on the session when we were discussing about the business law to some extent, and we were talking about the legal systems, it was just about familiarizing the students to these terms and to these different strategies that exist. At the end of the day, it's the managers who will select these, because again and again, I will emphasize that none of these is like a solid, basically like let's say a solid recipe that is written on stone. That for sure, for example, if you are a service sector, if you are a company offering services, you must like have a centralized strategy. Why? Because we have read it in our, like let's say, international business course. It's all about experience, and it's all about the trends that are existing at the moment right now in the international world. But of course, again, everything has to be modified exactly as per the products and services and as per the market which you are operating your business in. Pressures for global integration, which we were continuing, about the global sourcing of raw materials, components, energy, and labor. Sourcing from large-scale centralized suppliers provide economies of scale and consistent performance. Well, we gave the example of, let's say, human resource and cheap labor in countries like China and India again. So it's all about the global sourcing. So if you are a company, like let's say operating in the United States, for you accessing the labor market in India and China, it will be a global sourcing of, let's say, human resource. Or sometimes, like you may need the raw material as a company, like let's say you are the producer, or you are the Nike manufacturing plant in the United States, producing sportswear and T-shirts and whatever, and the cotton that you may need in order to make those T-shirts, those cottons you may, for example, find it cheaper from, let's say, importing it from Egypt. Why? Because Egypt is one of the largest producers of cotton in the world. So you will decide to source your raw material globally and go to another country, which is Egypt, and get your raw materials from there in order to gain the competitive advantage in reducing your costs. Global competitors. Global competitors will be another pressure in terms of global integration, because global coordination is necessary to monitor and respond to global competitive threats. So in order for you to have an upper hand, and in order for you to have a well understanding of the international competition in your industry, you may need to have a global coordination. You will need to have a proper understanding and analysis of what is going on in the world in terms of the competitors, in terms of your competitors that are working internationally. Availability of media that reaches customers in multiple markets. This is a resource that international organizations must take advantage of. Firms now take advantage of the internet and cross-national television to promote offerings in many countries at the same time. So, of course, it's a resource that you can use at your disposal, but it just matters that how you will use it and how effectively you will use these resources, as it's available to everyone, because everyone has the internet access and has the access to the media. Local responsiveness was the other side of the diagram which we were discussing, because I'm just going to go back to the same slide to remind you guys. If you remember, we were discussing this diagram. Until now, we were discussing the pressures of global integration. Now we will look at the pressures of local responsiveness. So for the local responsiveness, a characteristic of multi-domestic industries in which firms attempt to meet the specific needs of buyers in individual countries, as well as to adapt and modify and change to the local competitive environment and distribution structure. So it's the willingness of these industries in order to modify their products and services as per the needs and wants of the local environment. Although most firms prefer a global integration approach, some degree of local responsiveness is necessary due to differences in individual markets. This is exactly what I was saying. As I told you, nothing is 100%, nothing is absolute. Although most firms prefer a global integration, however, some degree of local responsiveness is a must in order to satisfy the differences in individual markets. For example, given the distinctive local conditions, Walmart, because everyone knows that Walmart is a very basically big international business, and all of us must have heard of it, even though we may not have the Walmart in our countries, but it is famous enough to know it. But still, even this company, even Walmart, store managers in Mexico, they had to adjust their store hours, their merchandise mix, their marketing approaches, and even their employee training as per the local needs in Mexico. So we will see that even though that they are an international company, but this doesn't mean that that they will necessarily just follow their own rules as a with a centralized strategy. They will need to have some modifications. Pressures for local responsiveness. Continuing the previous slides, diversity of local customer needs. For example, the products in the food and furniture industries require much adaptation, which of course it's not only this, it's many of the other industries as well which require much adaptation. Then we have the differences in distribution channels. You have to understand that working in different countries, it doesn't mean that the distribution channels are all the same. For example, we all know about the famous distribution inventory management, basically, which somehow falls under the distribution channels. In Japan, we have the JIT, which is the just-in-time inventory, and it's about the how the raw material, and it was first introduced by the Toyota manufacturing plant in order to reduce its costs and in order to not to keep the spare parts and the parts for basically making the cars. In order not to have it in their inventory, they created the just-in-time inventory. It means that whenever the robot, for example, needed the front bumper of the car, the front bumper of that car would maximum be, I mean, for example, the longest number of hours that that bumper would be in the manufacturing plant would be like, let's say, 5 hours. It would not stay in the warehouse for a long time. So this helped Toyota to gain a competitive advantage over its main rivals in Japan, such as Honda and Nissan, and the other local automobile industries. So it's really important to understand these differences. So as I said, like systems in Japan, India, China, and other countries in Europe, they vary greatly, and those companies and those international organizations must have a proper understanding of them. Then we have the local competition. Where many local rivals are present, it is best to offer carefully adapted products and have a local presence to maximize knowledge of competitors. So when you have the local competition, I mean, when you are a company producing some goods in your in that local market, you still have the pressure of the other local competitors, because those are also operating in the same field, producing maybe the same type of products. So so due to their presence, it is best to offer carefully adapted products. So you may want to make sure that the products that you are offering to that local market is exactly the products that people are looking for, and in order to have it produced at a lower cost, so you can even reduce your cost. So even the cost will be the price will be attractive to your market as well. Of course, the cultural differences is another pressure in terms of local responsiveness, because you will have to adapt to these cultural differences, as Mr. Nasrat said. For products where cultural differences are important, such as books and kitchen appliances, these are the examples that this slide has given. Well, of course, such industries may require more of understanding of these cultural differences and more modifications, and some industries may require less. But as per this example, in terms of, like, let's say, books and kitchen appliances, you may need to consider these cultural differences more carefully. Yeah, in terms of the products and the marketing. And of course, the host government requirements and regulations, which we discussed. You have to follow the rules and regulations of the local government, and it's a must in order to have a legal practice of business. Then we have the 4 strategies emerging from integration responsiveness framework, which strategy number 1 is home replication strategy. Strategy number 2 would be the multi-domestic strategy. Then we have the global strategy, and finally the transnational strategy, which we will discuss. As per this diagram, because we will discuss each of these strategies in our coming slides. However, this diagram will give you a clear understanding in terms of the level of pressures of each of these strategies, on each of these strategies. So the pressure for global integration, it's weaker. Like when we have the home replication strategy, which is here, we have a weaker pressure in terms of local responsiveness on the home replication strategy. And we also have weaker pressure from the global integration. In terms of global strategy, it is strong from the global integration and it is weak from the local responsiveness. Multi-domestic strategy is weak from the global integration and is strong from the local responsiveness. And finally, the transnational strategy is strong from the global integration and it's also strong from the local responsiveness. Now we want to understand what each of these strategies are and what they mean. The home replication strategy is when the firm views the international business as separate from and secondary to its domestic business. Well, we can understand that from the name as well. It's home replication, so it's based on the local market and it's based on domestic operations. International business typically pursued to generate additional sales for domestic products. So the only so the only reason that this company using this home replication strategy, the only reason that they would become globalized and internationalized would only be for selling more products as compared to their domestic market. Products are designed with domestic customers in mind, so the main emphasis is the local customers. They don't care about what the foreign markets want, so they don't adapt to the foreign markets. They just export it. And the firm expects little knowledge flows from the foreign operations, of course, because they don't need to know much about the foreign competition and the foreign market. Why? Because even if they do know a lot, they are not going to make any of these changes and adaptations. Why? Because their main emphasis is their local market and domestic market. And they're usually based on simple exporting. So it's simple exporting. They don't manufacture specifically for any specific country. So having discussed this specific strategy, I'm just going to go back to the previous slide to show it to you on the that diagram to see it. So home replication strategy, as you can see, it was very weak in terms of global integration because it is not going to make any adjustments for anyone. And also it's weak for the local thing because although its main emphasis is the local market, but reading the details of it, it says that the firm views the international business as a separate from and secondary to its domestic business. So it's also considering the international market as well. So it doesn't even have a very strong emphasis on the local market as well. It's considering both, but mainly the domestic. Then we have the multi-domestic strategy, or the multi-local strategy, which the headquarters delegates much autonomy to each country manager. So this means that the headquarters, wherever it's based, they give some level of independence to each country's manager, to each country's branch that they have, allowing that management to operate independently and pursue local responsiveness. So they will, and that's why it's called multi-domestic, because in each country or in each region that they're having a branch, they're delegating the power to their local managers in each of those regions in order to make these changes and to pursue the local responsiveness and create the changes for the local market. The managers substantially adapt products and practice to suit local conditions. The managers function independently with little incentive to share knowledge with managers elsewhere. Why? Because they all have their own set of strategies. So there is no much need of cooperation and coordination between the different branches, and the firms end up with a collection of disconnected markets with no coordination or integration of national markets. As we discussed, they don't require this coordination. So again, going back to that diagram, we will see that the multi-domestic strategy, in terms of local responsiveness, it's strong. Why? Because it's giving that, it's delegating that autonomy to each of those branches in order to pursue local responsiveness. However, in terms of global integration, there isn't much pressure on multi-domestic strategy. Then we have the global strategy. Global strategy is when the headquarters pursue the global integration, seeking to control the country operations in order to minimize duplication and maximize efficiency, effectiveness, and learning worldwide. Emphasis emphasizes on centralized coordination and control of R&D, production, marketing, and after-sales services. Management views the world as one large marketplace. The firm offers standardized product using standardized marketing, and the main advantage is lower cost and it's easier to manage. So this is what we have in global strategy. And looking back at the diagram, we see that when we have the global strategy, we have most of the pressure coming from the global integration, whereas less it's from the local responsiveness. And one of the reasons about the less part of the local responsiveness is this line, where it's saying that it emphasizes centralized coordination and control of R&D. So basically, all the main orders are coming from the headquarters. So there isn't much delegated autonomy to the other branches that are there in different regions or different countries of the world. It's all coming from the main headquarters. And I'll give you the example. Like, let's say, for example, the Apple, the iPhone, for example. I mean, how much changes do you see of the iPhone that you buy in Afghanistan compared to the iPhone that someone else buys it in Western, let's say, Europe? So there isn't much in terms of local responsiveness. It's the same product, it's the same features, everything is the same. So that will be considered as a global strategy. And finally, we have the transnational strategy, which has the strong pressure from both the international part and from the local responsiveness. Basically, it's a tug of war. The firm attempts to strike some ideal balance between global and multi-domestic strategies, combines the major advantages of multi-domestic and global strategies while minimizing their disadvantages. So basically, as per these explanations, it should be an efficient mixture of what we have in global strategy and what we have in multi-domestic strategy. And it applies the model standardized whenever possible and adapt when necessary. So this is something which this is, I think, the ideal strategy. This is something that is more likely for an organization to actually practice, because as we said, nothing is 100%. So you don't have an organization with 100% global strategy or 100% multi-domestic strategy. This makes more sense for an organization to see that to basically standardize some parts of its strategy and some parts of its production and products, and to some extent they will adapt some of the features when necessary. So this makes more sense, and it's the transnational strategy. And finally, going back to the diagram to see where it stands, the transnational strategy stands here, with most of the pressure coming from the global integration and also the local responsiveness. As you can see, IKEA, which is a very it's a big brand in terms of furniture. Even this organization is practicing the transnational strategy, which as I said, it makes more sense and it's more practical. Some 90% of the product line is identical across more than 24 countries. So of course, most of its basically strategy and production, it is standardized and it is the same throughout all the countries that it's operating in. However, IKEA modifies some of its furniture to suit the individual countries. So basically, this word "some" here, it's like a keyword here for transnational strategy, because not everything is 100%. So to some extent, you will need to create some changes as per the to pursue that local responsiveness. IKEA's marketing is centrally developed at company headquarters, but implemented with local adjustments. So again, in this part, the "but" is actually the key word. because it's saying that the marketing, it is centralized. However, it does need some local adjustments. For example, to suit the language difference in the catalog. So it cannot have the same catalog printed for all the countries that it's operating in, and they speak different languages. Then we have the organizational structure, which this somehow addresses the question that Mr. Nasrat was asking in terms of integration and the different changes. And if you remember, I told you that we're talking about changes in structure if we are discussing integration. We will get to that, and you will see that, what I was actually trying to explain to you. The organizational structure is the reporting relationships inside the firm, the boxes and lines that specify the linkage among people, functions, and process that allow the firm to carry out its operations. Which, of course, the boxes and the lines, it's referring to that structure, which I'm just going to show you at a glance. I'm talking about this. This is the boxes, and this is the lines that it was saying, just to make things clear for you. So it's the reporting relationships inside the firm with those boxes and lines that specify the links, the linkage, and the coordination among the people and functions and processes that allow the firm to carry out its operations. So it's showing that where each department and where each person is actually standing and who has to report to who. In larger international firms, organizational structure includes subsidiaries, affiliates, suppliers, and various other partners. And a fundamental issue concerns the choice between centralization and decentralization, which, if you remember, I think it was Mr. Asif who was asking about the centralization. This, again, is one of the things which we said that nothing is 100%. So to some extent, it's very important to understand the centralized aspect and what are its advantages and disadvantages, and also decentralization, to come up with a balanced equation when you want to create your own and design your own organizational structure. It should not be 100% centralized, and it should not be 100% decentralized. So you are the one who should actually design an efficient organizational structure. Okay. This exhibit will show you the contribution of each of these factors, like subsidiaries and headquarters. The subsidiary is primarily contributed to these activities. So these activities are the ones that are contributed by the subsidiary: sales, marketing, local market research, human resource management, compliance with local laws and regulations, and to somehow even studying the like local trends and getting the market information. Headquarters is the primary contributor to these activities: capital planning, transfer pricing, global profitability. So you can see that all the major decisions and all the big work is done by the headquarters, and the more practical work, the more executive work is delegated and it's transferred to the subsidiaries to carry out. And some of these responsibilities are shared between the two, which with the subsidiaries lead. So let's say a mixture of these two, but mostly the responsibility of the subsidiary would be geographic strategy, local product and service development, technical support and customer service, and local procurement. Again, the shared responsibility, but with more contribution from the headquarters, would be broad corporate strategy, global product development, basic research and development, global product sourcing, and development of global managers. I will not say that this such thing exactly will be in a question in your exam. As I said, the questions of your exam will not be questions that you can simply look into your slides and find out. They will not be very difficult questions if you understand the slides that we were discussing. They will not be very difficult if you understand the main basically the main topics and the main discussions that we were discussing in our class. But so I will not ask you to list for me, so you will have to memorize these. But however, I will ask you to like give me some examples of what are the contributions of subsidiaries and headquarters, or what can be shared among the two. I don't want you to list them. You can even explain it to me instead of like listing them. You can just explain it in very like short, like 1 or 2 lines. That, for example, the more executive work, such as like let's say sales and marketing, you don't need to list all 5, are contributed by the subsidiary. The major decisions, such as capital planning, for example, or budgeting, is done by the headquarters. And there are some which are shared amongst the two, which you can also discuss very briefly. Of course, again and again, I don't expect you to memorize anything, and you don't need to have anything memorized for the exam. However, you need to understand all these slides that we discussed. Alternative organizational arrangements. The export department with the international division as a variant. So you're talking about the different boxes and lines that you can add to your organizational structure. One of them will be the export department. You can have all the tasks and responsibilities and duties of that are related to export to a whole new department called the export department. So if you see that you have too much of export basically and too much work that is related to your export operations, you can dedicate a whole separate department called the export department, and even have a division with the international division, and you can also even have that international in your international division. The centralized structure involves a geographic area division. So if you are practicing a decentralized strategy, you may want to have the geographic area division. Like for example, I'm just giving you the example. On the top you have the general manager. Then on the bottom you have like 3 boxes in the same line. Wait, I'm not sure if I can draw these here so it can be clear. Like let's say if this is the general manager, then you can have you can come down to, let's say, 3 boxes that are in the same line. So it means that all of them have the same level of power, these 3. And like for example, this one will be, for example, for Europe division, this will be Asia, and this will be Australia. So you are, since it's already decentralized and you are giving the autonomy and you are giving the independence and power, you're delegating the power to them. So it's best to have their own divisions and geographic area divisions. The centralized structure involves either product or functional division. So when you're talking about the centralized structure, you won't have this different regions as we had up here. You will have your divisions based on the product or the functional divisions. Like for example, the line manager or whatever, like what do you call quality control and other managers that are involved in terms of your production line. A global matrix structure blends the geographic, product, and functional structures, although this is complex and difficult to achieve. And of course, you have a mixture of these two, of the decentralized and centralized, which will be the global matrix structure. It will blend the geographic, which is this part, and the product and functions, which is this part. So it will be a mixture of both. Now we will see the different examples. You have you have the president on top right here, and in the export department structure, you have Under that, you have the general admission, you have the R&D, you have the IT and logistic, marketing, and export department. So all of these are in one line because all of them are contributing to the same level, however, in different fields. And they all have to, they don't have to report to one another. They will have to directly report to the president on top or the CEO. In the next example, we have the international division structure, which this has that geographic thing which we were discussing right here in the decentralized structure. In this part, you have the domestic operations, which is here, and we have the international division. The international division has a head, it has a manager, for example, and these two will have to report to this manager, and he, in line with this manager, has to report to the president. So it's pretty much simple, and I think it's self-explanatory, but we just have to discuss it in, as it's part of the course syllabus. Then you have the geographic area structure, which you have the vice president. So this is the president or the CEO. Then there is one level lower will be the vice president, and as you can see, there is vice president for each of the regions that this company wants to operate in. So it's the North America, South America, Europe and Middle East, Asia, Asia Pacific, and Africa. So all these vice presidents, they are in the same line. They don't report to one another. They report directly to the president. Yes, of course, it is the hierarchy system as well, but usually they call it the organizational structure. But yes, it is what you were saying. Then in terms of product structures, let's go back to the slide. In the centralized structure, we have it involved in terms of products and functions. So we're talking about this one right here. Okay. So, for example, the president of Motorola is all the way on top of the organization, and the managers that have to report directly to him are for the mobile devices, like basically the person in charge or manager for the mobile devices, for networks, government and enterprise mobility solutions, and connected home solutions. So these will all have to report to the president. And as you can see, it is not based on any geographic regions. Global, the organizational structure designed as per global function structure. Global function structure is like you have the CEO, and it's the example of an oil company, of a petroleum company. So the CEO is on top. Then you have all vice presidents in the same level, but for different departments. And departments are divided in terms of exploration, for oil exploration, for example. Then you have for the development, for production, for gas marketing, and upstream research. So all these, again, they report directly to the CEO. Okay. Global matrix structure is the one that there will be a mixture of both, and it's a bit complicated in designing its structure. It's an arrangement that blends and mixes the geographic area product and functional structures in an attempt to leverage the benefits of a purely global strategy and maximize the global organizational learning while remaining responsive to local needs. So it wants to get the advantage of both, of the global, basically, competition and market, and at the same time of the local responsiveness in the local market. It is an attempt to capture the benefits of the geographic area, product, and functional organization structures at the same time, while minimizing their shortcomings. So, of course, the best thing is always to have a mixture of different things. However, you have to put in mind that you want to only grab the advantages of each of the elements that you are bringing in your mixture and in your blend. And the global matrix structure is closely associated with the transnational strategy. So going back again, in order to have it very clear, the transnational strategy was, sorry, I think it's here. The transnational strategy was when you have a mixture of both this part, the strong emphasis of the global integration, and you also have the strong pressures from local responsiveness, and that will give you the transnational strategy. So this is your blend. This is your mixture. And in this mixture, you're bringing in the global strategy, and you're bringing the multi-domestic strategy. And of course, it's for the sake of enjoying the advantages of both. And this is how it will look like. Like it's giving the example of General Motors. So this will just be for your reference, because you will not be asked to design one of these for the exam. But this is just for your information that how it will look like. The global matrix will look like. Okay. The dimensions of truly global companies. A truly global company, a real global company, they have different dimensions. There are different dimensions to these organizations. One of them is a strategy. It's a global strategy that they have. The other is the visionary leadership, the international vision of these organizations. Then you have the organizational culture and the organizational processes. And finally, you have the organizational structures. This is something which we have all discussed, but it was just a diagram just for the sake of having it as an illustration. Okay. Since we were discussing about the visionary leadership and the importance of vision, there are 3 examples of visionary leaders of the world, which I'm just going to read through them. And it's not really that much important. It's just for as an interesting fact for you guys to know. One of them was Ratan N. Tata, who's the from the Tata Group in India, who now owns the Range Rover as well, the Land Rover company. He is the chairman of the Tata Group, transformed this Indian conglomerate. Conglomerate, I'm sure that every one of you guys know, it's like a holding. It's like a big company that owns different types of businesses under its power. It's called a conglomerate. So he transformed this Indian conglomerate into a transnational organization. Tata oversees a $22 billion family conglomerate whose companies market a range of products from automobiles to watches. So this is an example of how successful it is for a company to consider a transnational strategy rather than simply a global strategy or local responsiveness strategy. So it's best to have a mixture that enjoys the benefits of both strategies. Then you have Mr. Carlos Ghosn, who's the CEO of Nissan and Renault, which Renault is, as you all know, it's a French automobile industry. However, it's now owned by Mr. Carlos Ghosn, and he has transformed a Japanese automotive firm from bankruptcy to profitable operations as a result of having a vision of shifting its company and directing its company towards the transnational strategy. And finally, the Toyota CEO, who's Mr. Fujio Cho, has led his firm to record sales in intensely competitive global automobile industry. And as I mentioned also in our discussion, and it's interesting for you guys to know as well, Toyota was also the founder of the JIT, which is the just-in-time inventory system in terms of inventory. And there are very few other industries that manage to practice and implement the just-in-time inventory, because it's very difficult and it's very complex, However, this was the competitive advantage that Toyota had over its other rivals. And that's why Toyota was very successful in Japanese automobile industry. And we have the organizational structure, which the pattern of shared values, norms of behavior, systems, policies, and procedures that employees learn and adapt. The personality of the firm. So, an organizational culture, as we discussed here, is the pattern, and it's like a combination of all these shared values and norms that exist within the organization. And the top MNCs or MNEs, they attempt to instill global culture in the firm's operation worldwide by emphasizing a borderless mindset. So basically, they try to standardize the culture. They try to have a culture which is borderless, and in order not to have too much of that cultural conflict between their branches and departments throughout the world, developing internationally sophisticated managers and emphasizing the firm's global performance, such as Nestle, Nissan, or I don't know, these two other what do you call organizations as well. So what these MNCs, what these leading MNCs have done is basically standardizing the organizational culture, because they did not want to have too much of this cultural conflict. And finally, the organizational processes is this is the last slide, so don't worry about it. It's over, and this was just for you to. I had to cover all these, and it's the last slide, so don't worry about it. And finally, the organizational processes is the managerial routines, mechanisms, and technologies that allow the firm to function as intended. And the examples of it was General Electric digitizes all key documents and uses intranet and the intranet to automate many activities and reduce its operating costs. So it's about the shifting and the changing of the processes within the organization in order to reduce your costs and control your costs. And the Schlumberger keeps a huge database of skilled individuals within the firm available to all subsidiaries on the corporate intranet. Well, that will give it a competitive advantage in terms of hiring its human resources. Why? Because it has a proper database of all the skilled individuals. So as you can see, each company, they have their own winning cards and they have their own basically advantages that they focused on in order to have the upper hand in terms of competition with their rivals. So I hope the topic we discussed today was as of interest of you guys, and if there is any question, I'll be more than happy to answer. Don't worry, the slides, as usual, you will receive it on your email. So other than receiving the slides, is there any other questions? Okay. Regarding your final exam, I will give you some hints on next week, which will be our last session. And by the way, sorry, I forgot to inform you that next week we will have our session on Thursday instead of Saturday. So it will be this coming Thursday. So today is Saturday, so in about 5 days from now. And I have already informed the WWS, so they will send you the emails accordingly. So just have it in mind. However, on Thursday, I will give you more explanations regarding the exam. But please just bear in mind, as I said, I don't want you to memorize anything, but I do require you to study all the slides very well. And Of course, you are more. I mean, you are more than welcome to ask me any questions if you want. You can send me emails, and I will try to answer as good as I can. But there is no special email that I should send to you because it will cover everything. And I'm just telling you right now. So please just try to study everything. The questions will not be to the level that you can simply just look into slides and memorize them and just basically put them into the paper. It's something that I want you to write about. I don't want you to write a lot. Most of my answers will be 1 or 2 lines. Inshallah, by next week, I will have the structure of your exam prepared. If I have that, then I will tell you exactly how many questions I will need you to give me a longer answer, like in terms of 1 paragraph, and how many you will have short answers and even multiple choice. But even if it's not ready by next week, for sure before your exam, I will send you an email and I'll let you know. But regarding the content of the exam, because that will be the structure of the exam, the content of the exam is just all the slides that we have covered so far. So yes, but of course, you will need to read through the slides, but put them in your own words. So I don't want you to just not read the slides and just write anything for the exam, saying that okay, you told us that we can write our own words or our own idea. I do want you to study the slides. The exam, 99% it will be online because it's the first time, so I don't really know how they will conduct the exams. But as I have discussed with them before, it should be online. So it will be online just like your other exam, and it will be 80% of your exam because 20% of it was the project. Don't ask me for the marks because the marks will be out with at the same time when I'm giving you the marks for the exam, inshallah. However, in general, all of you guys did above average, so no need to worry about that. However, that was 20 marks of your exam. The exam itself, it will be 80%.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, regarding our notes, sir, I have personally received 3 sessions. Like my last slide that you have sent was marketing and globalization. So how many other files, marketing in the global firms, sir, the last slide that you have sent. So how many more slides?
Let me tell you, okay, just give me 1 second. Let me tell you exactly how many slides you should have by now. As of now, you should have exactly 5 slides with you. One of it I will send you like by tomorrow or the day after, which is for the today's class, and another one will be for the next session, which will be the last, basically the last set of slides. So until now, you should have 5.
Okay, it means that we should have, until now we should have 3 slides, or we should have 5 slides, sir.
No, 5.
5 files.
See, you should have one of it, which was globalization and the business environment. The second
Yes,
one
sir.
was strategies in a globalized world. The third
Yes,
one was
sir.
marketing in the global firm. Fourth one was the legal environment. Fifth one was the political and legal system in national environment. The 6th one, which was for today, which I will send to you tomorrow or the day after, is the global strategy and organization. And finally, next week will be technology and innovation.
Okay, sir. If I'm not mistaken, sir, I have received 3 sessions. Could you please?
That's sure. It's okay. I will send you all, but it's very strange because the 3 weeks ago when we had our last session, one of the students he asked that I didn't receive all of it, so I sent all the slides. I think I sent it to all. I'm not sure, but it's okay. I will send all the slides by tomorrow, inshallah.
Yes, sir. If you could please send us all 7 slides in one email, that would be very
okay.
good, sir.
No worries. No worries. I'll email it to you.
Yeah.
So any other questions other than the slides?
No, sir.
Okay. So have a good evening, everyone.